I'm Chris Spags, joined by the former birthday boy, but if you were a girl, it would be your birthday month, and we would just talk about it forever. Fast Eddie Fear, how you doing?
I didn't realize that was the thing.
Oh, there's a girl who I went out with briefly, not briefly, for a couple months earlier this summer, who I am now not seeing, but I've been following her birthday. It was 3 weeks ago. She's had celebrations every weekend for that entire time period.
There you go. That's how you do it if you're going to do it.
And just for the record, we are live now, so we're good. Eddie had some issues, obviously, if you were paying attention over the weekend with his stream, but thankfully he's got it sorted out, so you get to see our beautiful faces talking about all the relevant NBA news, so we're good.
Yeehaw. And quite a bit of relevant NBA news there is, my friend.
What a transition, Eddie. That's why you're the best.
It went from a shit slate to a very exciting slate in a hurry there. I like all kinds of stuff going on here.
It did. Everything is changing at once. Make sure to throw us a like, by the way, before we get into it. The likes just make the picks better, and all the analysis we give, there's a direct correlation between the two. We are an analysis-based site that uses data, and there is a strong correlation between your likes and the quality of the players that you get from this show. So throw us a like. It might be bullshit. I don't know. We'll find out. But let's talk about some of the cheap guys. We were talking about one guy in particular. Let's talk about the Knicks. What are you doing with the news that Enes Kanter is starting and Noah Vonleh starting as well? How does this affect your value on that side?
Yeah, I'm annoyed because I was going to windmill Kanter and Vonleh were going to be strong plays for me. I had them written up all day as I expected them to start. They started the last game. They put Mitchell and Trier back on the bench after they started that game. Vonleh and Kanter started the second half. And I've been saying for a while, Kanter should start for this team, and I'm pretty sure it was going to end up happening. I would not be surprised if Kanter doesn't lose this job again for the rest of the year. There's just no reason for Mitchell Robinson to start. He's not a guy who, with his foul trouble issues and being so young, is going to play a ridiculous number of minutes anyway. Let him come in off the bench. Let him actually get a little more going. You can call a play or two for him when he's not playing alongside Hardaway as much. So that never made any sense. The other ones, sure, you can make an argument for Burke or Ntilikina or Moutier. You can make an argument for most of the other guys outside of Hardaway. But Kanter should have been starting, and I wouldn't be surprised if that actually sticks for the rest of the year. If everything else continues to go crazy, but if you had Hardaway and Kanter start all their healthy games for the rest of the year, I wouldn't be terribly surprised. I'll let you start. I love Kanter a lot. I think
I agree there.
With the number of very strong center plays on this slate, I was all about him off the bench last game at 5,900, and he gave you 47, 48 fantasy points. Now, the matchup with Nurkic isn't an ideal one. The matchup with Portland isn't an ideal one. There are potential foul trouble issues there, but he all of a sudden becomes the best point per dollar play on the slate. There's a lot of variability there, but where you're saving that much money over guys we like to have an upside like Vooch and Whiteside and Nurkic, all of a sudden point per dollar becomes, I think, the highest owned play here. And the real question is, like, this is quite a challenge for our luxury ownership dynamo here at Osmo.com, because that's a lot of moving pieces. Like, all of a sudden now you have, like, if you go back only what I think would have been 30 minutes or so, Thomas Bryant was all of a sudden be like, wow, how owned is Thomas Bryant going to be? And then that completely changed all up because he was center only, and now you have Kanter coming in and chipping away at that, and now you have Vonleh coming in and chipping away at that. Now you have a cheap Hazonia coming in. Mike Scott is now out. I generally like the slate, though. I think people will find a few ways to screw this up. I'm redoing the rankings, obviously. I was 2 clicks from putting them in. Go ahead and talk about Vonleh.
Talk about one way they might screw this up.
Sorry.
So I think I think the deeper dive guys are really smart guys, and this is not me bashing them directly, but they were just talking about before we started the show, talking about Noah Vonleh in his spot. I hate Noah Vonleh with Kanter starting and them on the same court. According to NBA Wowie, which again is a site you should be checking, NBA Wowie, search it WOWY.
You know what Wowie stands for? I'm curious if you're. A lot of people...
I should know. I just assumed it was like impressive NBA.
No, it's NBA with or without you.
Oh, I like that. And then also you could sing it too. You could sing with or without you.
Yeah, you can U2 that sucker. But the I do not bring that up with any sense of pride, because I was a full year and a half into using that site before someone told me. I'm like, you would have thought I would have got that before, because that's basically what the site does, is with these guys on and these guys off, with and without these guys, what happens. So I'm passing the knowledge along. So that's
much
what
more clever than I realized. I won't forget that now. But I just was like, oh, NBA Wow, it's just a stupid internet name, and that's all. Never thought beyond that.
No, there you go.
Yeah, that's why I do the show. I get to learn from you. But Cantor, 110 minutes. Vonleh Cantor have been on the floor. Cantor averaging 1.28 points per minute with just himself on the floor. So I think that's the relevant part I would look at NBA WoW. You don't care about the whole five. You care about like the key guys and how they drive the rest of it. So Cantor really affects Vonleh. Vonleh at just 0.61 points per minute on the floor with Cantor. And I think to me, the real thing is Cantor just soaks up so many rebounds, which is part of Vonleh's upside. He can stretch the floor. He can do a few defensive things, but Cantor just takes up so much of that I don't see this being a Vonleh night. I would actually prefer seeing, you can actually see the light bulb turning on for Spags. People are saying for NBA Wowie. Look, I like learning things. I am a dork in that one respect.
I'm a huge lifetime learning guy, to an offensive and annoying. Like a full half the people I meet are like, wow, that guy really feels like I'm in his history class all day. That's really aggravating. I got a fair bit of that, but
yeah, I think useless facts, especially that can bump out more meaningful things I have in my brain, all the merrier. Please, everybody come on board. But yeah, I think people know Daron Graves saying Noah Vonleh revenge in the chat. Like, I think there's going to put a lot of people on the Vonleh. And I think just seeing on a permanent basis and also thinking about it from a basketball perspective, I really don't think it's a great. Oh, is Lowry actually out? Is that confirmed?
Do we have Lowry out? That's that I expected.
I mean, it seems like it's shaking out that way. Somebody in YouTube says it. I don't know. Unless Slack says it, I don't trust it. And by the way, get on that premium Slack if you are not. We're keeping an eye on that first for questions. So when we get to the tight part of things and we're doing all the either ors, we will be checking the premium Slack first. So use the promo code LiveBeforeLock to get a free week of Osmo.com. All the ownership rankings and projections that we talk about throughout the show are on there, including Eddie's rankings. So go use that promo code LiveBeforeLock. We also have a pretty big deal coming up on Thursday, which we'll talk more about, or actually for Black Friday and for Cyber Monday. So if you are getting anything now, get that free week now. And then we'll have the really big deals coming on Friday through Monday. So keep your eyes peeled for that.
So what kind of, I want to ask what sort of sample size in minutes that Vonleh Cantor thing was the one thing I wanted to ask.
It is. They've shared 110 minutes so far this year.
Okay.
So
that's
enough to me. Once you get 3 digits, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I will say the following things about Vonleh. I still like Vonleh as a play because, and I don't know if we have updated ownership, I don't think he gets much over, say, 20 minutes. I like him a lot on FanDuel where he's droppable at his $4,100. He is a very good point per minute guy. We had once in the preseason, once in the early regular season where he put up double-doubles in 16, 18 minutes. 3,900 on DK is a very small number. So I will say I am, I do think the information you're presenting is important. I do think Cantor is one of the best rebounders in the league. Nurkic certainly doesn't suck at it. Neither does him. So it's not a situation where, his ability to pull down 17 rebounds in 28 minutes is very likely. So that does cap the ceiling a fair amount, but I would still hedge higher than you would. I do think the ownership is low enough. The floor is fairly, there are foul trouble issues. When he was really going a couple weeks ago, and one of the most annoying things about Fizdale is he's trying to, they're trying to figure out what works, but every time a guy has a bad game, he just reinvents the whole goddamn wheel. So you're like, oh, that guy had one bad game, we'll pull him out, and it's just, so Vonleh was amazing, had one game with foul trouble, shit went a little squirrely, and then all of a sudden he was, completely banished back to getting 11 minutes a game. Sort of annoying stuff there. Vonleh is, a poor man's Dennis Rodman. He's going to get his putbacks. He's going to pull down a lot of rebounds per 36. Him and Cantor are now, when they start next to each other, they're in the top 3 best front court rebounding duos in the NBA, amusingly enough, if I'm mathing that right in my head. But I will say I do think your concerns are very relevant. I still generally like. It isn't a windmill slam for me. It isn't a must play. I'm absolutely fine if you're playing Cantor instead or Hazonia instead or none of the above because they're the Knicks and the matchup isn't great, and who knows if they're down 30 after a quarter and Fizdale just runs the bench the rest of the game. Nothing would, really strike me as that odd in this situation. But I'm generally still a fan of Cantor. I like seeing Cantor in tournament lineups, and on FanDuel being in your cash lineup doesn't really bother me that much. I do think 0.61 is somewhat of a small sample size. You're looking at 110 minutes, so 2 1/4 full games, 3 36-minute games. That's relevant, but not so much that I think it's overly indicative. I think that would normalize out to something closer to 0.8. So then I'm saying, if you play Cantor, if you play Vonleh 28 minutes, 8 times 0.8 times 28 minutes, you're getting 22.4 fantasy points. That's still, obviously with a ceiling above that, fairly attractive to me. So I'm in a like, not a love But I do think that's great information you're spitting.
Yeah, that's fair. And just for the record, Hazonia is averaging 0.84. So to me, just looks like a better play. And I'm also a little biased against Vonleh because I like him so much, actually. I think, that just came through officially from DK Live. But yeah, I think to me, like, that's the thing is, like, I'm a little more critical of Vonleh because I know I've gotten better at picking Vonleh games after he burned me with one bad foul game, which was, again, another Fizdale special. So I think for me, just seeing him on the floor with cancer is not something I've loved in the past as a Vonleh aficionado. So that's comes from a place of love, Noah. So if he has a big revenge game, then fuck it, pretend this didn't happen. But I would prefer Hazonia for me. Let's talk about another big value spot. We got Thomas Bryant, a guy you mentioned briefly. We also have Kelly Oubre in the starting lineup for the Wizards. Any interest in Bryant or Oubre in their new roles for tonight?
I mean, I'm less interested in Oubre than I was. They had been angling, I will say, to get him extra time, and all this news did, I think, is like double his ownership. So I think his floor is a little bit safer now. I feel a little better if you had Oubre in your cash lineup. On a 4-game slate, you have to take places to stand, and just putting a guy out there again, alongside Wallen, Beal, and Porter for the majority of his minutes now. He's the number, I'll be generous and say 3 option on offense. It's probably number 4. So I think the ceiling is sort of gone and the ownership is doubled. So I would be much less interested in Kelly Oubre than I was an hour ago, because I just expect his ownership to climb somewhat precipitously there. So, and that's, we will see where that number comes in, but I bet you end up with, 30% Kelly Oubre or 28% Kelly Oubre. I would much rather play Mario Hazonia, save whatever, $1,300 and hope that works out for me. Especially FanDuel, again, you can drop his ass. The FanDuel lineup I'm tinkering with right now has that entire Knicks front court in it as the plays I like. It actually has Hazonia, Vonleh, and Kanter in there. So,
how about Thomas Bryant?
Yeah, I minimum price on FanDuel $3,500, $3,200 on DK. People are like, "Who is this guy?" Late of the Lakers. Very sort of like a Montrezl Harrell light, I think, is a way you can look at him. Energy guy, points, rebounds, putbacks. I like him. I don't. It's purely you're just gambling on minutes at this point. The last game, even though Howard went out fairly early on, Bryant played, I believe, 5 minutes, and it was only at the very end of the game. So I am going to look when I get a second. I'm going to put these rankings up in about 30 seconds, and then after that, I'm going to try to find a little more contextual information there, because this is a minutes play. I would right now, absent any additional information, guess he plays. I have him at 19 minutes in the rotation I'm tinkering with, and I'm with 20 fantasy points. So I'm perfectly interested in that as a play. Now, center looks pretty sexy now, so it's tough to go there on FanDuel. Because, unless you're really hoping you randomly pull 30 out of him, because somebody out of Nurkic and Kanter and Vooch and Whiteside is going to get 50 or 55 tonight, so you're really sacrificing a lot of raw points when you decide to punt there. But, DK 3,200, well, I'm a pretty big fan if that fits in your lineup. I think you're kind of inured against any particularly heinous downside. I'm generally a reasonable fan of that play on DK at 3,200, more so than I am otherwise. This makes, in my opinion, Harrell actually better. One of the reasons that Gortat would have gotten significant run by whatever Gortatian standards we're using to make that statement is the fact that he does a fairly good job against Dwight Howard. They've spent a lot of time on the court against each other. He doesn't stop Dwight Howard. He doesn't terribly do anything too horrible to him, but he did do a very good job of lowering that ceiling and just bodying him up and just being a size guy there. With him out now, I think you end up going to Harrell a little quicker. We even played some time at the 4 last game, but so I do think this is, if you are overly exposed to Harrell, or just exposed to Harrell significantly, something that you should be, I think, a pretty strong fan of. So it makes me like Harrell a little bit more, because I do think it pulls minutes off Marcin, and Boban is still around the I don't mind throwing you out there in tournaments type of line. Like, last game he played 10 minutes and had 20 fantasy points. These two teams got together and did play not long ago. I want to say a week ago. And Boban had completely stupid Boban line. I will find it, but he had whatever dumbass number of fantasy points in whatever very few minutes in Boban Marjanovic, 11 minutes and 50 seconds, 33 fantasy points, because that'll happen.
Pretty efficient.
13, 9, 1, 1, and 2 was his line in those 11 and 11:50. Now that was a huge blowout. And I would say it's unlikely he plays if the game doesn't blow out. Again, they played on... That was longer ago than I thought. It was 3 weeks ago. It was October 28th. The Clippers won by 32 in L.A. And, but that isn't certainly an unlikely conclusion here. This is a truly woeful Wizards team on basically every meaning of the term right now. So I'm okay with Boban in tournaments at this point as a really low-owned value guy. There's a couple... interesting guys you can take shots at value here when there's going to be a lot of popular excess value. We have official Kyle Lowry news yet? Is that going to show up?
We do not yet, but also our ownership just updated on Osmo.com. So again, with a slate like this with a ton of late breaking news, the ownership updates are pretty key down the stretch here. We'll give you some of them obviously as we go, but drop that promo code in live before lock on Osmo.com to get a look at all of that. I'm actually just checking. So Thomas Bryant, real fast, just touch on him. I like him a lot, and I think your comp to Montrezl Harrell is a pretty interesting one. I don't think he's quite as athletic, but a little bigger, a little more of a shot blocker than an offensive guy. I think Harrell's got some good get to the hoop kind of speed, whereas Bryant I don't think has that quite as much. But I like Bryant a lot. I think he's a fantastic play, and I think the fact that we currently have him at 15% on DK means that the value is going elsewhere. And that, to me, would make him a pretty interesting pivot. Now, unfortunately, Noah Vonleh not highly owned, though. Actually, nope. You know what? Higher than Thomas Bryant.
Yeah, I would have thought they were both in 15 to 20. I didn't catch what you said for the number on Bryant, but I would have thought they were both high teens to 20. Is that around where we have those guys?
You are correct. They both are. Vonleh currently at 16%, Bryant at 15%. So I would greatly prefer Bryant.
I would agree in a vacuum, especially because you're saving $700. That's a non-irrelevant amount of money there. You're not seeing my new rankings. That's because I'm actually hitting the button as we speak. Here we go. Good looking out.
Oh, there we go. I'm not seeing her. Okay. There we go. What was Team Tracy? Oh, yeah. Chris Atencio also wants to know what Team Tracy is on your hoodie.
A friend of mine with whom I play basketball, his wife has breast cancer, and they has a number of ways of raising money for her continued sustenance, and she has 3 young kids, and it's a pretty sticky situation. So they've had all kinds of benefits, and are selling the wristbands and T-shirts and sweatshirts. So if anyone wants to get a sweatshirt for a very decent cause, they are $30, and I will more than happily make that connection. But just showing some support for someone who can use it right now.
There you go. And it is that that time of year, all the cancer awareness for the end of the year stretch here. So that is a thoughtful thing. Go hit up Eddie. Go donate to the cause. You're winning all this money with DFS because of Eddie's thoughts every single night. Go support Team Tracy. It's a very thoughtful thing. Let's see. Any good questions yet? Nothing good on the premium Slack, but the ownership stuff is up. Let's see if there's anything noteworthy on ownership. You want to do some guesses? You want to do some fake daddy like?
Real quick, yeah. I'm hitting the button on the rankings now. 3, 2, 1. Upload.
I cannot believe the guy who's at number 3 right now, given all the other value. I'll tell you that much.
Is it Jeff Green?
It is Johnny Isaac.
Oh, I would have been happy with Jeff Green. Yeah, that number's going to come way down now. Like, I certainly don't mind Johnny Isaac. It's worth pointing out, so rankings are up. It's worth pointing out that there's 8 teams playing tonight, and only 3 aren't on some measure of a back-to-back. The Clippers, the only ones who played yesterday. Of the other 7 teams, only the 2 Florida teams don't play tomorrow. It's the Heat and the Magic. So, apropos of not a ton, but worth pointing it out that the other 5 teams, non-Clipper, non-Florida teams... Oh, actually, wait. I'm not sure the Wizards play tomorrow. I may have fucked that a little. I think the Wizards, the Heat, and the Magic don't play tomorrow. I will confirm that. But it's worth looking at the back-to-back situations on those teams.
Yeah. Also, just one last note on Thomas Bryant, because Brutal Master DFS. Bryant put up 15 fantasy points in 4 minutes last game. Could break the slate. I think he could break the slate too, but that's not the reason why. I don't think that one game is necessarily the reason to go to him. That's a garbage time-ish game that he got in there. He's just a good player. He's just a good per minute guy, and I think the matchup fits him well.
Yeah, he's a good. I would think career he's 1.1 fantasy points a minute. I'd be very surprised if it wasn't 1 to 1.2. He's going to be somewhere in that area, I think.
This year, I think Fantasy Cruncher's number is 1.42.
Well,
But I think it's
this
just
year, I
season,
think you're
though.
looking at like 60 minutes or some really small sample.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I meant career.
I thought theirs
but
looked more longitudinal, but I think this might just be this year.
sure.
I don't
So
know,
yeah,
but
try me.
Fantasy Cruncher, a great product.
So yeah, try me on ownership. We'll use that to segue into questions and
Okay,
guys.
so yeah,
and
who would you say it would be the top 5 owned guys on the slate right now?
DraftKings or
Go
FanDuel?
DK first. We can do FanDuel too.
People will be all over that. The ownership really durfs it. You're going to end up with a lot of guys in the 20s and stuff. I'll go with the guys I'm pretty sure we're going to be solid among the guys we knew were going to play a while ago, and then pivot into some ownership. You mentioned Jonathan Isaac third. I do think that comes down. I think he ends up, I don't know what we have him at. If he's third, he's probably around 30 in the ownership, I would guess.
31 right now.
31 would land you about third. I think that ends up being closer to 20 as the rest of this sort of amortizes out. I'll say Hassan Whiteside is definitely going to be in there.
You are correct. If we're family feuding this, you got one of them. Hassan Whiteside is number 2 with 31%. Also,
Tobias Harris will be in there.
you are correct. 30% for Tobias. Number 4 on the list.
So I need 1 and 5.
So you got 2, 3, and 4.
I need 1 and 5. I don't have 1 yet.
Now, 1 is a weird one to me.
I guess they were updated since then. I'll say Gallinari himself.
He is number 5. Number 1 is Justice Winslow with 36%. I think that's it's an assumption of box score chasing, I think, for Justice.
Yeah, I mean, you obviously like no Dragic, no Tyler, no whatever. I think people do still not understand the role he'll play there. People are like, he's going to play point guard, and he's really not. Josh Richardson will play more point. Dwayne Wade will play more point. He will be out there and handle the ball a fair amount. Certainly, especially at that DK price, 4,500. I don't have any issues with you running Justice Winslow out there. But if we must have him at 35 to 40% then. And if that's the case, I would look other places.
Winslow's at 36% is the highest owned guy. So there you go. You got the top 5 free. I like the family feud way of doing this. So we should make this a feature that we do.
That was interesting. I'm curious, where do we have Bryant on that list? Again, you said 15.
Bryant is, let's see, I can't count it out. Actually, you know what? I have it on my other sheet.
Yeah, we don't need the ordinal number, but you said 15, 16%. So yeah, yep. that's I'm a pretty big fan at that point. So let me
put him at 28th overall.
All right, so guys I would want to overweight the field on. On DK especially, it's harder with Cantor in there now, but if I'm running 2 center, I probably try Cantor and Jared Allen. I like Jared Allen at I think he's $5,700 there now. His, let me pull up the log, but his production when he gets to spend time around the basket is exceptional. And when he gets drawn, he doesn't. So against Miami, where he's going to see mostly Whiteside, but also some Adebayo, and he gets to spend all his time under the basket, and he's generally pretty good in spots like that. So if we go back and look at previous games at the start of the year, he had a big game against Detroit because he gets to hang out under the basket against Drummond. They played Detroit again, and he had 26 fantasy points in 22 minutes fouling out. Otherwise, that number would have been bigger. And there's just generally, I like getting him under the bucket when I can. And again, last game against the Clips, 44 fantasy points, because again, they have no one there who's making you wander out from under the basket. So, pretty big fan of Jared Allen in this spot. Just at what I expect the ownership for him to be pretty damn small. I'll say we have something like 10%.
Let's see. We have him at 9%.
9%.
You're killing it today. You're on fire.
There you go. Well, either that or both the awesome ownership projections and I are vastly off. But as far as
two great minds can't be wrong. That's just science.
Oh, okay, that's science. Yeah, it's like women with small brains, 1/3 the size.
Exactly.
It's
There's
science.
A lot of science.
It's
to prove
science.
Any point.
Yeah, it's science. Good call. By the way, started today's show. Microphone right here. Just want to point. I can be taught. I'm incredibly clever. So other guys who I'd want to be over on, Wade himself, I do like Dwayne Wade in this spot at 5,200 or 4,800. Does handle the ball a bit more. Actually comes with a pretty safe floor. I think with all the guards they have out there, the front court's a little more specious, but the back court, I think you get 26 minutes of Dwayne Wade. I'd be really surprised if you didn't get 20 against the Nets. And I think 30, 32, 34 are real chances. So I'd have probably more than the field of Dwayne Wade. A lot of his ownership will get pulled onto Fred VanVleet. So Yeah, I like D Wade to have some significant exposure there. I
love
probably
Wade. One of my favorite plays, especially with the daddy narrative too. We get double. No Tyler Johnson, no Dragic, and we get him having a kid. I think that's perfect. It's a perfect storm.
It'd be great if they were playing the Thunder, because he could be running up and down the court with Westbrook and be like, get that rebound. Hey, look at my babies. Oh, check out my babies. But,
and then they could do a little thing like he did to De'Aaron Fox.
Yeah. I still like D'Angelo Russell without Karis LeVert there. Said it from the second LeVert got hurt that, like, and I don't think it's that hot of a take, but you're going to get some big games out of Russell. That price isn't going to come up and up. He'll be 7,500 soon. He's up to 7,300 now, but it just had 50 against the Clips or what have you. There is still a real ceiling there. Not a matchup you were thrilled with. Lowry will start. Okay, that changes shit.
All right, bye Fred VanVleet.
Not entirely, by the way. So let me speak on this. I wish this news had come out. Like, now, yeah, you probably get rid of him because enough people will, like, he will have enough vestigial ownership. You probably want to come in on the under. But for what it's worth, I liked Delon Wright a lot at 3,600 on DK. Was actually one of my very Boban-y, but another was definitely going to get time. Without Lowry in there, would have been well lower owned than Van Vliet, and is a pretty decent fantasy producer when he gets enough time. Can't play Delon right now. You can still, in theory, play Van Vliet, who plays the 1, the 2, and the 3 in various aspects, and still will be in this game to some reasonable extent. I don't think I would, because I do think you get just DERF ownership left over from it's 630. There's a lot of moving parts, and you just get stuck in 8% of lineups, so probably moving away. Easy pivot to Dwayne Wade, by the way, if you're just looking for a real quick click and click. They're basically the same prices and positions. DK, FanDuel, I think they're point and shooting, so that doesn't really translate. But
FanDuel, who cares about those guys? DK for life, nerds.
All right.
I just think it's funny to have like a Bayside Valley rivalry with FanDuel. I'm a DraftKings guy.
That's cool. That's fine. I totally get there's very it's a very interesting sort of psychological test to figure out what's going on there. So they'll start who we thought they would: Lowry, Green, Leonard, Pascal, and Ibaka. I like Pascal a lot just because the minutes now are 36 instead of 30. Kind of more of a cash play. There's some of the best cash plays of the year are on this slate. Like, Montrezl Harrell is a phenomenal cash play. Obviously just saw a big tournament upside last game. In tournaments, you call me crazy here, but I'd probably try to underweight the field and go other places. Like, DK is different. DK is just underpriced. FanDuel is 7,500. Last game gave you the random 60 burger, but that was 7 steals and blocks combined. Like, I would project him for high 30s. It's 7,500 and, I don't know, 35% ownership at a sort of sketchy power forward position there. I wouldn't have a problem ending up somewhere else. Still a great play, just talking about ownership really when you talk about that, but 7 steals and block kind of unlikely, although you really have to love playing against Washington, who really does not have their shit together. So I guess, it's just worth pointing out that, there's a real chance you end up getting 34 out of Montrezl here, and he's not, winning you that much on FanDuel, and he should be fairly popular.
I think that makes sense to me. Let me see what for anything else ownership jumps out. Got a bunch of questions backlogged here, so let's just see what people are asking here. How does Lowry affect Kawhi for you? Does he affect Kawhi for you at all?
It changes a bit for me in that I think it makes Kawhi a little bit safer, but reduces a little bit of the upside. Like, Kawhi has been incredibly efficient this year, but generally hasn't had any real takeover games in a while. Sort of did at the beginning of the year where you had some like nice 25 Kawhi shot games. Now I think that normalizes a little bit. He's less polarizing as he would have been as a play. I would have had a little bit more tournament interest without Lowry, just based on maybe he sort of goes into takeover game mode. It's let me look at what I have for a rotation now. Downgrade if you were going to play DJ Augustine is fairly relevant to say. A bit of a downgrade if you were going to play Evan Fournier, though he's still just way too cheap on DK. But a little bit of a downgrade if you look at that play. Obviously, it takes Fred VanVleet out. But another guy on that team who won't get almost like any ownership now and kind of deserves some is Jonas Valančiūnas. Like, he's 52 and 53. He just pops off sometimes, kids. And at this point, there's all these other centers that people are going to want to play, and all these pay down options at center from Bryant to Vonleh to etc. you're going to get 8% Jonas Valančiūnas, and I'm not shocked if you get 23 minutes and 39 fantasy points here. He has a real capability of doing it, and certainly the spot against Orlando, not a particularly sticky one. If you look at, like, I have game logs against Vooch randomly up here, and you have 19 minutes, 26 fantasy points, 20 minutes, 20 fantasy points, 27 minutes, 30 fantasy points, 35 minutes, 39 fantasy points, 26 minutes, 36 fantasy points. Just at ownership, I generally prefer all those other centers we're talking about. I just raw points per dollar, I think every other center we've talked about, they're all priced very well, especially if you look at DK prices. I like Nurkic an awful lot. I like Kanter. I even like Allen a little better here because I do think he generally is going to be towards the top. I like Whiteside. Whiteside becomes much more polarizing also as a play when you take Dragic off the court. If you look at his games, without Dragic, you have a better chance of getting under 30 and a better chance of getting over 60. So I like Whiteside quite a bit. But the last game, he was very good against the Nets when they played, although he only played a few minutes. He had, 24 minutes and nearly 40 fantasy points. But Jared Allen wasn't in there, and that's relevant. He was, I think Ed Davis started that game. That was during the Jared Allen sabbatical. So I like Whiteside.
Chalk Whiteside's a terrifying place to be.
Yeah, and if he's going to be that popular, I want none. Like, I think that number has to come down a lot. We just opened up a lot of center plays, and Kanter is in there now. I don't know if we'll get new ownership again, but I would think Whiteside, ownership becomes less chalky than it was before. I still think you're high teens to low 20s, but there's a lot of very, very good center plays now. I like playing Kanter. I like playing Allen. I like playing Bryant. I like playing Nurkic. It's a pretty good spot, so...
From a lineup construction thing, just looking at the DK ownership,
Yep.
Nurkic, Vucevic, Whiteside, and Kanter all projected for above 25% ownership. So,
yeah,
I think
a lot of utility center going on there because that's more than 100% on those four guys. And there's a couple others I like, but again, based on that, that's when I want to play Jonas Valančiūnas. There's you need 2 fouls on Ibaka.
Or Thomas Bryant.
Right, or Thomas Bryant. Sure, certainly Thomas Bryant if we think he's going to be that low owned. And that's a little more dangerous. But again, $3,200. There's a real chance he does very well for you. And even if he's not great, if he gets 15, it's not going to put a nail in you. So, I don't like Valančiūnas with Ibaka. I do think that's a strong either or. And I like Ibaka a lot. Lowry being out would have made him actually a little bit better for me. You get those rare 17-shot Ibaka games there. I think that would have been a little more interesting and a little more likely the game stays close. So that's a slight negative, but still where he's $6,000. That's still a very nice price for how good and how consistent Serge Ibaka has been this year. Like his worst fantasy points in the last 3 weeks there's a 24 and a 28, and then it's 46, 36, 55, 42, 31, 34. Like, he's been not Tobias Harris consistent. You want to look at a guy whose game logs are just phenomenal from a cash standpoint. I was talking about all the great cash plays today. Tobias Harris fantasy point production over the last X games is 41, 33, 43, 36, 42, 38, 38, 41. That's incredibly consistent. Like, that is such a low deviation from the store there. So...
here's another interesting lineup construction question while we're kind of on that topic. For a DK single entry GPP, is it worth making a line playing Wall, Kawhi, and Lillard, or would you try to play more of the mid-range guys? I do think that is a choice people are going to have to make with all the value.
Yeah. Yes, I think playing Wall, Kawhi, and Lillard is a fine lineup because there's no reason they can't all get 50 plus. Like I'm not surprised to see that there's no real negative correlation between those things occurring, and it will be a reasonably unique lineup because more people will be inclined to play some whatever Gallinari, Tobias, Kanter, just some of those nice mid-range plays. So yeah, I think I'm a fan of that lineup. It's reasonably unique enough, and there's no negative correlation there. So yeah, it's me like. Daddy like.
Yeah.
Stick with my.
Me like.
Don't want to kill my brand there.
The much less popular version of Daddy Like, where we ask a caveman what he thinks about
like.
things.
They're destroying our city. No,
How do you find James Johnson's return to affect things on the Heat side, or does it affect anything at all for you?
No, it affects quite a bit for me. I don't know. Well, like, we don't know how many minutes he's going to play. He played one game so far. He played 15. They're not on a back-to-back. I'm not shocked if you randomly get 24 minutes out of him here, and then that kind of screws J. Rich a little, Winslow a lot. Even before his first game, I said, I'm pretty sure I don't want any Kelly Olynyk again until people get hurt. And when this team comes back and gets full strength, they're going to be worse than the Nets as far as crap. They got 13 guys they want to play now. Like, there's just going to be so many healthy bodies when you put Dragic and Tyler and all those guys back in there. People are actually going to fall right out of the rotation, probably Kelly O being the first of those. So, yeah, James Johnson being back, very relevant for me. Whiteside, it threatens him. If you're playing, I would not play Whiteside in cash. I think Vooch is a vastly better cash play than Whiteside. I think Nurkic is a better cash play. I think Kanter is a better cash play. I think almost all the centers are better cash plays than Whiteside. You're playing him because against the Nets and without Dragic there, you can absolutely get 70. Like, that's the plan. It's just like, I'm going to get a massive Whiteside game here, and yeah, that is a greater than normal chance of happening. But there's also a real downside there, and I'm not, convinced his minutes hold on in any sense long term. Holy shit, messages! Take it easy, people.
We're very popular.
Breathe. I gotta find a way to.
We are at 12:55 people right now, so hit that like button. We appreciate you guys tuning in for a short slate. Not a bad turnout. So thank you guys for watching.
We'll get 1,300 tomorrow on that ridiculous Wednesday slate where you and I gotta have a chat.
Wednesday and Friday we have 26 combined games.
Yeah, 27 I think. I think it's a 13 and a 14.
Can't wait to write a column for both those, but that's fun. A fun Thanksgiving week.
Occasionally, I like my non-writing part of the shindig here. So hit me with all these questions that are coming in.
Yeah, let's see what people in the premium Slack have. And again, premium Slack gets first cracks. So let's do that. Although I'm not big on him, why is Trey Burke projected so terribly after his last 2 games?
I don't know exactly what his projection comes at, but the last 2 games, I mean, any projection you get on Trey Burke should be. If you're looking at an average projection, that number should come down. The last 2 games, off the top of my head, he had 26 and 30 minutes, or give or take a minute on either of those, and had massive games. He shot well and amazingly. 2 games ago, he shot like 80% from the field. Last game, he made, I think, at least half his shots. Between all that, you had ceiling performances and ceiling minutes in theory. So now you just don't know how much time he's going to get. I like Trey Burke plenty in tournaments. He's still very advantageously priced on DK at 4,200. I would probably pivot back to Moutier if I'm building one lineup today. It's a very zag when they zig type thing. Before his first big game, I said play Trey Burke because I project him almost identically in minutes to Moutier. There's a huge amount of delta variation, but one of these guys could very possibly pop off here. So that's just an ownership play for me. But, you asked me to project Trey Burke tonight, in not the best matchup, I would say 23 minutes and 22 fantasy points. I'm curious what the ownership has him at. I'll guess 15.
He is at 12.
Okay. Terrible for me today. I've been much more accurate than that. But, yeah, so here I'd probably play Moutier, who is, I think, 8, I'll guess. Lower number anyway. So yeah, I would zig when
we
they
have
zag.
not 1 Moutier, so that would be very low.
Okay, well yeah, lower anyway. So yeah, I would zig when they zag and play Moutier instead of Burke in one lineup. But again, that's still low enough ownership on a small slate. It's just Portland, not the matchup you're super looking for there. And has gotten more popular. So not a ton to add there, but I would project him for somewhere around, and I don't know what our projection you're referring to is, but he's averaged more than 40 fantasy points over the last 2 games. So yeah, I would project him for not much more than half that because I'm not sure the production's there, and I'm not sure the minutes are there.
You've talked about Vucevic a fair amount, but 2 people in premium Slack, Damtar and Tack something, asking about Aaron Gordon. What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, it's a really tough spot. So again, this comes in being an ownership question. Again, that's one of the reasons why I do think I feel safe saying industry best, phenomenally accurate projections at Awesemo.com are such an amazing value because, then is really an ownership question. I'm going to guess that Aaron Gordon, we'll start with DK where he has the best price, ends up being about 20% owned. I would let him go at that number. That's a point at which I don't think the matchup is very good. At that level of popularity, I'll try to get over on those people. He has not been good against the Raptors in the past. It's a particularly sticky spot. Kawhi is in there as well, so he's constantly running into some combination of Kawhi and Ibaka and Pascal. None of those are things you really want to do. They guard the line well, so it's hard for him to get his three-point game on. He's underpriced on DK. He's very much in that Fournier category. I wouldn't look at any lineup with Aaron Gordon in it and be like, oh, that's terrible. But, a little more inclined on FanDuel, where due to the price, I think the ownership is much lower, and you're, again, sort of just chasing ceiling there. But I like Vooch more. I like Fournier more. I like Gallinari more. I like Tobias Harris more. I like Montrezl Harrell more. So, raw production, I don't think it's a good spot for him. So, yeah. I will look, but I certainly have the impression that he has struggled in this matchup, too. Let me see if I can pull up my data on that bad man.
Yeah, I agree with you. I also like Siakam a little bit more because of Gordon's existence. I think he's good in games with those kind of fast, like playing downhill stretch fours. And more often than not, I think Siakam kind of has his best games versus those guys. So I actually have a taste of Siakam now. He's pretty high priced on DK. I think pretty close to his price ceiling.
He's pretty much on FanDuel too, where he's 69 or some such, which is nice, but not inexpensive. So, but they're defensive stats. You're hoping he gets there. I think he's a fine tournament play. So I'm very ambivalent on that guy. But that would be my take on Gordon. I think he's a little better on FanDuel just because the ownership I think is more advantageous. And on DK, if I build a lineup, it wouldn't have Aaron Gordon in it. I wouldn't chastise someone for having him there. But, yeah.
Sir Legend asking, how do you attack center in a single entry GPP? He says on GPP, which is not a website, but I assume, actually, I don't know what site I would assume it is, but how would you attack center anyway for a single entry?
All right, I'm going to look at it at FanDuel real quick, have him clarify. He probably means DK, but it's about 50-50. So Vooch is 9,500 on FanDuel. That I would not play that in single entry. It's just cost per dollar worse for me than Nurkic, worse for me than certainly Cantor, and you can certainly punt with Thomas. I think would all be three options I'd be a little more interested in there. Whiteside, I think we've discussed at length. I like the matchup with Nurkic a lot. Basically, whether or not he's seeing Enes Kanter or whether or not he's seeing Mitchell Robinson, I expect him to play well. He's generally been getting a longer leash, and the reason he doesn't get it is either foul trouble, which I don't think is incredibly likely here, or just doesn't get it going, and they just sort of hot hand, give the ball over to Zach. I like Nurkic a fair bit here. He's always been productive in his time on the court against Kanter. It ends up being game by game minutes, but it's if he doesn't get in foul trouble, he's gonna be fine. If you look at games they've played appreciable minutes, I'll sample it to getting at least 17 minutes of Kanter because it's up there. But last time they played, Kanter started, got 27 minutes, 18, 11, and 3 and 1 for Kanter, very good. Nurkic 11, 8, and 4, and 4 fouls in only 18 minutes. Lost it due to foul time. Game before that, Nurkic had 17, 9, 4, and 1 with his 5 fouls. Game before that, managed to stay out of foul trouble in a big matchup. Both of them played a lot of minutes, and Nurkic had 18, 12, 6, 2, and 5 with his only 3 fouls in that game. So, I think generally he'll be okay with the fouls, although it's certainly a threat. But if he stays on the court, the upside is particularly massive. So I like Nurkic quite a bit. On DK, it's an entirely different situation. I do like playing 2 because I do think they're some of the better priced players tonight. So again, we've talked a lot about Jaren Allen. I've talked about Kanter a lot, who I think will still go under-owned versus where he should be just raw production. Nurkic is 74 there. That's sexier. Vooch is very much in play at 8,300. He's very possibly, he's a fine play in single entry. Again, it's just giving you, 25 and 10 every game is pretty nice. Whiteside has all the ceiling in the world. I mentioned Valančiūnas, who would be in a pool, but not a guy I'd run in single entry. Vonleh, center eligible, and $3,900. Again, I don't hate that. And, Boban, 35, and then Thomas Bryant, 32. I'm kidding about Boban in single entry, but if I had 150 lineups, I'd have like 6 Boban.
Do you find Lowry and Kawhi together would be a good GPP or an okay GPP play on FanDuel?
Yeah, I mean, there you're wanting to run it back with Gordon or Vooch or certainly at least Fournier to try to get some equity in that game being the game tonight. It's worth, mentioning when you look at the games. We have 3 games that are 216 to 220 over under approximately, And then you have the Clippers in Washington, which is like 233 or some such. And also, sort of the closest game of the evening is basically a pick'em. So that is demonstrably the best game. So when you talk about stacking, the reason I mention that is a Toronto-Orlando stack will be the lowest or second lowest owned stack. So I certainly don't hate running out that lineup. But just running Lowry and Leonard and no one significant from Orlando would strike me as an odd choice unless you're running just massive amounts of lineups.
Somebody asked before, which I don't remember who asked, but just asking your thoughts about the Wizards and their dysfunction right now, and does it affect your views on Wall or even Beal? I think Wall more so tonight.
A little bit. I mean, the DK price on both those guys is still very, very strong. The FanDuel price not quite so much, but they're still priced very well in what we expect to be a really significantly fast-paced game here. The Clippers, backcourt defense is much better than their frontcourt defense. At the start of the day, I really wanted to play, Markieff because I thought Dwight would be out and there was a real potential for some additional upside there. Derek Jones Jr. got the start for the Heat again, so now we've got that weird lineup, but no Winslow in the starting lineup for the Heat.
Sorry, Winslow chalk.
Yeah,
it's a bummer.
I'm trying to remember exactly how many they've moved through some starting lineups there, but that's very interesting. Doesn't change a ton.
That benefits Josh Richardson a little bit, right?
I'm a big fan of Josh Richardson, and he hasn't super performed recently, so his price is still very tolerable for what we expect out of him. So I do not have any issue with anyone rolling out some Jay Rich in their lives right now. Has a real upside, not having Dragic out there. Hasn't performed in it, but certainly like the individual matchup. So I like playing Jay Rich. I do think he is a guy who does carry a 50-point upside here. His ownership won't reflect that as highly as it should.
Let's see. No, if we'll get on. All right, people asking about ownership. For a FanDuel GPP, would you go Wade or Magruder and Winslow or wait? What? This is a terribly phrased question. Wade or Magruder terrible. And Winslow or Evan Turner.
Come again?
See, it's a terribly phrased question. Would you go Wade or Magruder? And then also a second question, Winslow or Evan Turner?
At this point, I'd play Evan Turner for lower ownership and a similar projection. I think I'd play Wade of the first two. I'm pretty interested with what I can get out of that. Just a spot I generally am looking to go at here, but.
For the record, when you guys are asking questions, if you phrase them as though it's an LSAT question that I have to unravel, it usually decreases your odds of me answering your question, just because my brain starts bleeding when they're not phrased the way that I'm used to.
I love a good LSAT, by the way, just for fun. Nothing wrong with just taking an LSAT, just for good times.
How'd that do? The timing is really what screws you up on the LSAT, that you have to do it all fast.
I love a good LSAT. I don't hate, Kyle Lowry in tournaments, by the way. Especially if you don't have Kawhi, actually, I think I would slightly prefer it. But certainly a spot in which you can get a perfectly decent game out of there, and the ownership should be fairly sexy. So I don't mind, getting whatever 7% Kyle Lowry or 11% Kyle Lowry, somewhere in that range, I would think.
Touchdown in the premium Slack asking, can we play Russell and Dinwiddie together in a DK GPP?
Sure. Again, try to run it back with Josh Richardson or something like that. But yeah, that doesn't strike me. We've had a number of games recently where they were both good. They don't positively correlate. But again, a 4-game slate, I'm not overly worried about that.
Let's do some either or as we'll speed round through these. Gallo or Fournier for a DK GPP?
Gallo for me. Again, I'm a big fan of guy was not necessarily going to play, is playing. It just really positively affects the ownership, and only roughly 1/10 of the time does whatever his complication was actually limit him to any significant degree. So I will go with Gallo there. It was just underpriced. I mean, Gallo in the fastest game of the night at like $5,900 is pretty goddamn exceptional. So if he's fully healthy, he should smash that number. Like this whole year, I've been a slightly bigger fan of Gallo than Tobias. Basically, you were spending $7,500 on Tobias to get 35 to 40, and you were spending $6,000 on Gallo to get 28 to 35, and it was just always a little better on the second end there. He's just an underranked player for years of being injured the whole time, which I get that. It's frustrating as hell, but yeah, I'm a pretty big fan there.
Here's a 2v2 for DK. Would you go Whiteside and Dinwiddie versus Cantor and McCollum?
I like the first one much more in tournaments and the second one much more in cash.
Thoughts on Mike Scott with Gallo in?
I won't say unplayable, but you're asking for trouble. Like, he's really good. He's another fantasy point per minute guy. I like Mike Scott's game. And gets time at both the 3 and the 4 for this team, but you are playing blowout there. So if you're playing Mike Scott, I think at that point you basically are trying to play less Harrell, less Wall, less Beal, etc. So you're building that game into a blowout. Not out of play on a 4-game slate, but you'd really have to want it. He's in that rack with like Avery Bradley for me. He's not out of play. He's $100. He's probably going to be terrible, but it's a 4-game slate. He has the possibility on FanDuel of having 4 steals, 4 3-pointers, and some other random shit and getting you 33 and being a monster at $3,600 or whatever he is. So yeah, you could play Mike Scott. I certainly wouldn't be in my first lineup, but not completely out of play. But again, you want to really correlate that with that game not staying close. So you want the Clips to blow them the hell out again.
Who would you find to be your best raw points guard on DK under 4,500 or 4,500 and under rather?
Oh, Van Vliet's out, Tyler Johnson's out, so those would have been the first 2 answers to that question. Raw points guard 45 and 100. I'm gonna feel bad when I say Justice Winslow.
Oubre is 46. It's close.
Yeah, Oubre. It would be Oubre for me at that point, but it is probably still Justice Winslow. Again, just talking about some of the guys here since they're up in front of me. You can certainly run Danny Green out there in tournaments. A few extra minutes there for him as well. Hopefully the back is all good. Winslow we've talked about. Ellington at 4,400 still makes sense in the same way, isn't it? The Brooklyn isn't a team that covers the 3-point line very well. He has his path to his 7 3-pointer upside, so perfectly fine going there. Moutier, again, we've talked about. No issue with going with Moutier in tournaments whatsoever. I think that can be great. Augustine is a little more cashy. Evan Turner, again, I like in this spot, so no issue going Evan Turner. Trey Burke, as we've discussed. I'd probably stay off of Trier at this point. I will say, generally, I try to avoid the shitty Nets value. So basically, I'm talking about Joe Harris and Alan Crabb. But at this point, with all the other exceptional value that opened up in the last half hour, I do think the ownership on those guys gets down to 3%. And so, having Alan Crabb in a tournament doesn't bother me incredibly. I don't like it, and I wouldn't do it in my first 10 lineups, but the ownership makes that balance out right. And then again, Ntilikina not entirely out of play. Avery Bradley, those 2 plays are very similar. We're probably getting minutes in the mid-20s, have the ability to pick up some defensive stats. You need some things to break your way, but the ownership makes them positive. So there's some names from amongst that crew.
Let's burn through these either ors. We got a few queued up. Kawhi or Wall for FanDuel GPP?
It's going to depend on correlation a lot. In a vacuum, I would slightly rather play John Wall now. Just Kawhi, a little bit more money. You're saying a FanDuel GPP, so it's really a 2x2 because you're playing a different small forward or
sure.
Point guard there. But I will generally say Wall there.
Dinwiddie, Beal, and Porter, or Wall, Russell, and Mario?
Wall, Russell, and Mario.
Let's see. Avery Bradley, McCollum, Kawhi, or Gallo, Lou Will, and Russell for FanDuel?
Gallo, Lou Will, and Russell. I mean, Avery Bradley is kind of a desperation mode. You like that he held in the starting spot and they pulled Pat Bev out and not him, and I'm certainly interested if Pat Bev is 100% at this point. But, I will go with the latter of those 2 triumvirates.
Rank these 3 for DK GPP. J. Rich, Dar. I don't know who Dar. I don't.
Probably D'Angelo Russell's DAR.
Okay, Jesus Christ, guys, don't abbreviate too much. D'Angelo Russell or Tim Hardaway Jr.
Well, they're definitely all in the same wheelhouse. I will generally take Josh Richardson there. He's got a safer floor than them and has a similar upside to those other guys. So I will barely go J. Rich, but I would probably do in the order listed. I think I slightly prefer J. Rich to D'Angelo, who I slightly prefer to Tim Hardaway Jr. there. Moving Cantor into the starting lineup is a bit of a negative for him. Having Moutier in there instead of, say, Ntilikina is a bit of a negative for him. Certainly nothing wrong with playing Tim Hardaway, but I would rank them in the order listed, yeah.
Derek Jones Jr. or Hazonia for DK?
Hazonia.
Let's see. Who's your favorite second powered on FanDuel for cash?
Second power forward?
Yep.
I think I would have some combination of, I will look to be sure, but I imagine I have Harrell, Pascal, and Noah Vonleh as the top 3 for cash. Let me look, because you can...
Do you find Tobias and Harrell okay together for a FanDuel single-entry GPP?
Yes, again, I'm much happier if I'm running it back with Wall or Beal at least. The cash power forwards on FanDuel, I think Tobias, Harrell, Pascal, Ibaka, Vonleh, I think is the list. But basically any combination of those is I'm going to be just fine with.
Cantor and Gallo or Kawhi and Thomas Bryant on FanDuel cash?
It's really close. I'll take Cantor and Gallo. Cantor's just underpriced. $6,500 Cantor is about $1,500 too cheap if he starts and gets starters minutes. Which, again, last game he was coming off the bench, got going, and got 38 minutes or whatever. So if you're giving me 30 minutes of Cantor at $6,500, he's just too cheap at that point. You project him for 36, 38, 40.
You've been an Otto Porter whisperer, so thoughts on Otto on FanDuel?
Yeah, it's about an average Otto Porter spot, relative to the ownership, what I'd project him at, and where he comes in. So again, I'm very ambivalent today. If you have Otto Porter, fine. I certainly have no reason to take him out. Not into my first GPP lineup, not in any cash setting, but makes some sense. And having Dwight turn into Thomas Bryant does help a little bit. Having Markieff turn into Oubre probably helps a little bit too. They'll be interesting to see what they do with the minutes there. So I don't hate it, but I don't love it. Generally, I'm trying to play, say, Gallinari instead if I can come up with a few $100s, or Evan Fournier, or probably rather D-Wade, who is going to be a similar situation.
Lillard, Wall, Kawhi, rank them for DK.
We are locked. I will say points per dollar. I would probably have them Wall, Lillard, Kawhi. As far as wanting them in a tournament, it would probably be Lillard, Wall, Kawhi in that order.
Did this one lock already? I don't know if this is the later one, but THJ versus D'Angelo.
I think that's one of the 7:30 games. Knicks Nets tends to be both 7:30. THJ versus D'Angelo. Yeah, we sort of already did this. Slightly prefer D'Angelo because we did those two guys plus a third person whose name escapes me at the moment. Ready for some great Daddy Like? We got 2 of the 4 games.
Yes, Daddy Likes America's favorite game. Throw us a like, because Daddy likes and Uncle Spags likes. When you throw us a like, is it too much of the word like?
I would challenge you to verify that with data that it's America's favorite game. So here we go. I think we may be overstating that. Just guessing, but all right, downloading.
Wait, one fun point. I always think this is kind of funny. I just want to, because it just makes me laugh, and we'll do so much Daddy Likes. But this guy DFS in the premium Slack, and I'm just busting your balls, but he says, "Good luck, guys. Alan Crabb goes for 40." Like right as it locks, like he's been holding back that information that Alan Crabb's going to go for 40.
Right, he didn't want to
saving it for himself.
Yeah, I like that. He didn't want to spoil it. He's like, I would have said this before, but I believe.
Now you guys didn't get him, but he's going to go for 40, and I put it on the boards.
I believe in the team. I wanted to help. Number 1 owned player on DK in the 2 early games, Montrezl Harrell Zezel, 42% for red tips.
Point Chase City.
Yeah, I mean, not really. He's still just 66. I mean, he has paid off that price. Like the game log, for him going back to when they basically realized he was the best center on the team, which a lot of us realized, 5 months ago. But whatever. 34, 29, 37, 39, 44, 32, 33, 55. So 1 game under 32, and it was 29. Lots of mid-30s and high 30s, and randomly 40, 44, 55 upside games there in the fastest game of the night. That's, basically a pick-em. Like, I'm just saying that one doesn't strike me as a point chase. There's going to be some point chases coming up.
I just think the Gallo being back, and then Lou Will being back, and that's, more second unit time next to Lou Will, which not that matters. They can still get there. I just think there's enough margin there where it's getting tight, and I think it would be the night to I mitigated my ownership to him, and I'm an always Harrell guy.
Yeah, that's where I was too, and I've been talking about the guy all year. He's just a player I really enjoy, but the first thing I said about him was, like, I would probably end up being under the field, and I would have had 20% of this 40% here, just because it is Anyway, so Montrezl 42, John Wall 33 is second. 9K is a little too cheap for him. Also, people targeting super fast, sexy game. Vooch at 29 comes in third. Yeah, I think Daddy likes. Again, that DK price we're looking at is pretty compelling. I have a feeling FanDuel is like 8%, so price matters. Kelly Oubre, fourth place, 27%. Yeah, again, I would have looked to go under for that reason. Fifth place, Tobias Harris, 27%. That's, just fine, but, Gallinari back, other things, but he's been freakishly consistent. Sixth place, Aaron Gordon, 26%. Again, like I said, at that number, I'd want to come under. Kawhi, 24%, fine. Ibaka, 21, fine. Beal, 21, fine. Lou Will, 19, fine. Jonathan Isaac held on to 18% ownership, which is, I think, exactly what I said. I think I said 18. Yeah, I would that's a point chase. If you're looking for the point chase, it's like, oh, great, now I got the same guy in a really horrible matchup, and he might only play like 11 minutes. Let me get all of this. Like, that seems... might work out, and he's $3,500, can only hurt you so much, is objectively too cheap, but Fournier, 16%, see, that strikes me as too low. Him at still 54, 56 is almost safe, which is weird. Gallo at 13, Daddy likes that quite a bit. Pascal at 12, sure. Otto Porter, 11.5, see, that's what I'm saying, wasn't quite low enough. I'm a big fan of getting my 5 or 6 Otto Porter. Thomas Bryant, 11%, that's where we came in there. Daddy likes that a lot. Kyle Lowry, 11%, a little higher than I would have thought. Jeff Green, 8. Augustine, 8. Especially the news, I don't know if it would have gone there. Shea, 7, sure. Fred VanVleet held on at 5%. That was what I was saying, that people wouldn't entirely divest themselves. Gortat, 3. Danny Green, 3. Terrence Ross, 3. Mike Scott, 2.6. Again, going to have some trouble. Valančiūnas, 2.5. Daddy obviously likes that quite a bit. Jonathan Simmons, 2.4. Markieff, 2. Might be a problem. Patrick Beverley, 1.5. Might be a problem. Delon Wright, 1.2. Might be a problem. Austin Rivers, 1. Jan Mahinmi, 0.7. Boban, 0.6. Daddy likes. Avery Bradley, 0.6. Daddy likes. Satoransky, 0.27. Okay. Bamba, 0.19. Sure. Wezawundu, 0.1. Hilarious, that guy's still starting and it's getting 0.1% ownership. Jerian Grant, 0.08. I think out of the rotation currently, that seems like it could be trouble. Jason Smith, 0.08. And 0.07, Dwight Howard. Congratulations. You played yourself.
Don't play the guy with the bad butt.
Yeah. Don't freak the funk on a nasty dunk, as they say.
I was really happy to read that Dwight Howard wasn't a part of the disharmony in the Wizards locker room.
Boy, when your team is falling apart in the locker room and Dwight Howard has nothing to do with it, you've really, that's bad. Like, when you have Dwight in there and you don't even need him to start the shit. But, yeah, some funny stories about exactly who said what to whom. A couple of people said they'd like to buy a t-shirt. That's or a t-shirt or a sweatshirt. I think t-shirts are 15, sweatshirts are 30, I think were the numbers. So if you are interested in doing that, if you are a Awesemo member, go ahead, message my premium Slack, and then I will hit you back once I figure out that information, exactly how to do that best. And tweet me if you're watching the free show, because yeah, just good people, good cause, and actually a really comfy sweatshirt. I mean, I'm really enjoying this thing. I just got it last night.
And you're rocking it. I like the hot pink. It brings out your eyes.
Yeah,
you're doing it.
It's a thing. It brings out my eyes. Yeah, my poop brown eyes, I'm sure, are flashing in the pinkness. But I like the pink too. So.
Karl Marx in the premium Slack. No fucking idea who Brian is, but you talked me into it. So he liked our Montrezl Harrell chat. Look, there are not a lot of shows. I mean, we do it more than anybody. Josh, obviously, when he's on the live stream, he shows you his ownership that he's putting into each field. I played a ton of Thomas Bryant, so I'm going down on that ship with you. I believe in him in this matchup, and I think it's a very winnable one for him.
Yeah. I again, 3,200. Like, he is starting. Like, he's a guy who can get into some foul trouble, so it'll be interesting what goes there. But I'm certainly at the present ownership of 11% or whatever he was. I like TB.
We're all here for the 50 Bryant Thomas Bryant Day, or 50-point Thomas Bryant Day. The 50 Bryant Thomas Bryant Day would be
You joke, but he had with the Lakers, he was one of those Thomas Bryant, Thomas Robinson, one of those just backup bigs would occasionally get his. So we talked about him in summer league. Like he's I know he is. He's fine. He's good at 3,200 starting. Again, it's just gonna come down to minutes. I right now I have him 19 or 20. Real chance you get 24, 26, and I'd be pretty surprised if he wasn't very good at that price if that happens. So you're just hoping he gets more time.
The Clippers are a bad offensive rebounding team. That's what really guided me towards him. And I think he's just going to get a couple of easy points. And at 3,200, what's he got to do? He just has to fall on his face and get a couple of boards and maybe a block or two, and we're fine.
Yeah, just minutes and not foul trouble is what you're hoping for. So,
knock on wood. That's great.
Right.
Oh, actually, you know what? There is a lot of fouls. Oh boy, that is worrisome now that you say that. A lot of free throws attempted by the Clippers.
Yes. Yeah, they draw some.
Oof. All right. Well, we'll see how that goes now.
Yeah.
Damn you, Thomas Bryant.
3,200. I think it'll be pleasantly surprised. I'll take the over on 20 fantasy points. So that should generally feel good at 3,200.
Yeah, I hope so. Anything else you want to hit on before we call it a wrap? We're going to be tomorrow's the blowout slate of all blowout slates, so might as well save up some energy.
I may as well start studying up right now because it's
no shit. I got to prepare a sheet.
We got to figure out what we're going to do. Like, I feel worse for guy writing article and guy doing game by game. By the way, the deep dive when it comes on tomorrow will be probably 4:30ish. I imagine to give them some shot of getting through all that. But yeah, I'll try to have the rankings up at start of show, if not a few minutes before again, because again, there's always news, but at a certain point, just got to stick a fork in it and say it's done.
Yeah, tomorrow we'll probably hit the news up front, the sort of relevant narratives, and then probably try to do a bunch of questions tomorrow because there's just going to be that'll guide us to some talking points, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's again, good questions are you end up you're crowdsourcing the subjects of the show, which I think is nice. I like that.
Yeah, so everybody get your A games ready. We're going to do your prep tonight. Prepare all of your questions in advance and submit them for approval. Now, just some good questions, not just either ors. Either ors are tough for us to really turn into content. But if you have really good, thoughtful questions, use that promo code live before lock. Get an Osmo.com premium membership, and the premium Slack will be your key tomorrow. If you want to get all of the information that'll be in our heads for that slate. But go do that now. Promo code live before lock on Osmo.com. And we appreciate all you guys tuning in. We love that people come here and want us to give thoughts on news. We appreciate the fact that we can be there for you guys in your time of need. So thank you so much, especially this Thanksgiving time. We're giving our thanks. So we appreciate you. Any parting words, Eddie?
Someone said I'll respond real quickly to Karl Marx because, again, he's people who participate in class a lot get more fruit cups. So he asked, real thoughts on Mario Hezonja. Why hasn't he developed a lot? I like Hezonja as a player. I thought he was going to, challenge for a starting job this year, as we've seen proven out. I didn't think Lance Thomas was going to stick in that sort of role, and has a pretty decent all-around game and a pretty compelling fantasy game. So, the real reason he hasn't developed is with his time in Orlando and into New York, just hasn't gotten significant time to do so. It was very good in spot starts where he had enough guys out for Orlando in the past, and especially with Kristaps obviously out for a long period of time in a somewhat talent-starved Knicks squad, I thought he would get more of a time in a role here, but you just had other guys blossom. So randomly having hundreds of minutes of Alonzo Trier this year on his two-way contract really affects how much time you get out of Mario Hezonja, and Vonleh playing better, I think, than was expected, and even Robinson being early into the starting lineup, just the number of minutes available were much less than I expected. So I think it's just that he's, just hasn't randomly found his way in there. I'm not shocked if he's, starting for the rest of the year at this point. Wouldn't surprise me at all. He should be he is one of the top 5, probably best players on this team, even at this point. It's him and Cantor, and I would probably take Ntilikina just because I really value his defense. Tim Hardaway, might be Vonleh and Hezonja is maybe your best 5 players just as far as everything they bring to the table for this team. So, but it's just turned into other guys got more time, people we didn't expect to get minutes, and so Mario, coughed up some of that time. So there's the Mario Hezonja answer. I don't have a great answer, but I really think it's just lack of opportunity more than anything else. So thanks for everyone who was interested.
He needs usage to grow. I think there are a lot of players who need kind of an open runway to get better. And I think what we saw from him in Europe was that he was better with the ball in his hands, and he just hasn't been in a spot. Like for the Magic, he had big games whenever there were just less guys competing for shots with him. Yeah. I think that's I don't know if he'll ever reach his potential in the NBA because I don't think he's ever going to get that shot.
Yep. So, Eddie, can you speak to whether your cash and GPP rankings are site-specific or not? I do. I wrote a primer, and I haven't gotten it stuck to the top of it yet. And I have an A+ ranking I'm waiting to basically roll out when they do that. But basically a key or a primer to stick at the top of the thing. But those are specific to the DraftKings prices that are listed there. And it just ends up being a time issue for me. Basically, leading up to the show and the show, I'm doing a lot of research, hopefully watching a lot of video, monitoring news a lot of places, doing those rankings and getting ready to do the show. And, the rankings are fairly translatable from, say, DraftKings to FanDuel by just understanding that it's relative to how decent the price is. So you should be able to sort of intuit it. But they are DraftKings specific. They are at those numbers. So you would have had worse numbers on Nikola Vucevic tonight because you're using the opportunity cost of using your only center spot was much higher on FanDuel with so many good center plays, and the price was much less attractive. So it requires some intuition on your point. But as currently constructed, those are one site specific.
Thomas Bryant on pace for a 96-point game right now. So.
He has 2 in a minute. Is that what we
have?
have?
Sure does.
I was about to say. I'm hoping
if he plays every minute of the rest of this game, if he keeps going at this pace, he's going to kill it.
That's one of the all-time. Usually it's said whimsically, but people sometimes do that, where a guy plays the whole first quarter and has 30, and they're like, Giannis is on course for 120. I'm like, no, he isn't, because he's not going to play 48 minutes. So even if he holds it up, it's maybe 90 if he plays 36 minutes, but... that's the thing. So go T Bryant. So
go T Bryant. All right, thank you guys for watching. I'll be back tomorrow with the monster slate in front of us with lots of fun picks and stuff. So subscribe to the channel, throw us a like too while you're there. But we'll be back in then, and we appreciate you for watching. And good luck out there.
All right, bye.